Detectives hand Tim Westwood file to prosecutors to consider charges. Detectives investigating allegations of sexual offenses against DJ Tim Westwood have submitted evidence to prosecutors to consider charges. Claims of non-recent sexual abuse were made against the former BBC Radio 1 DJ in 2022. The Met Police previously said it was investigating alleged offences in London that occurred between 1982 and 2016, and officers have now submitted a file to the Crown Prosecution Service, CPS. Westwood, 66 years old, has previously strongly denied any wrongdoing. A CPS spokesperson said, "We can confirm we received a file from the Metropolitan Police Service regarding allegations of non-recent sexual offenses allegedly committed by a man in his 60s. No timescale for a decision on charging has been given." Detectives first received allegations of non-recent sexual abuse against Westwood in April 2022, after the BBC aired a documentary revealing claims against the presenter. The broadcaster has since been carrying out its own inquiry into Westwood's conduct during his time at the corporation. As part of that review, a 24-hour hotline was set up for people to report information. The report is yet to be published. A Freedom of Information request by BBC News earlier this year revealed the broadcaster had spent more than $3.8 million on the review so far. In July, the BBC said the report had been completed, but there were legal processes to go through before it is in a position to publish the findings. After the allegations were made public, a statement from a representative of Westwood said, "Tim Westwood strongly denies all allegations of inappropriate behavior. In a career that has spanned 40 years, there have never been any complaints made against him officially or unofficially. Tim Westwood strongly rejects all allegations of wrongdoing." Westwood began his career on local radio before joining Capital Radio in London. He then moved to the BBC and left Radio 1 and Radio 1 Extra after nearly 20 years in 2013. Westwood hosted a regular Saturday show on Capital Extra, where he was referred to as the Big Dog, before he left the company in 2022. Spain seizes 13 tons of cocaine worth $854 million in biggest drug raid in its history. Spanish authorities have shared dramatic footage of a raid on a property linked to the seizing of 13 tons of cocaine in what they described as the biggest anti-narcotics operation in the country's history. Officials found bricks of drugs hidden in a shipment of bananas in a container from Ecuador at the port of Algeciras in southern Spain last month, police said yesterday. The haul, described as the second largest anti-narcotics operation in the EU, had an eye-watering street value of $854 million, according to 2022 mean prices from the European Union Drugs Agency. The cargo container had sailed from Guayaquil, Ecuador. Dramatic footage shows the police hammering down the entrance to a property and searching it. Officers can also be seen trying to break a safety box before a woman is detained at what appears to be a separate location. The final shots show police officers loading the drugs, appearing in the form of green bricks, on vans. The operation, in collaboration with the Ecuadorian police, resulted in 5 raids and 1 arrest. The Ecuadorian export company was on police and customs records for a history of illicit trafficking, according to the police. Police are looking for 2 of its managers. To date, the largest drug seizures in Spain was 9.4 tons in 2023, and another 8.7 tons 5 years earlier. Ecuador intercepted a total of 204 tons of drugs between January and September this year, almost the annual average for the past 3 years, government figures show. Police investigating Russell Brand allegations hand-filed to CPS. Police investigating historical sex offense allegations against Russell Brand have handed a file of evidence to the Crown Prosecution Service, CPS. A statement from the Metropolitan Police said, following an investigation by Channel 4's Dispatches and the Sunday Times in September 2023, the Met received a number of reports of sexual offences from women in London and elsewhere in the country. A file of evidence has now been passed to the CPS for their consideration. As part of the investigation, a man in his 40s has been interviewed by officers under caution on 3 separate occasions. These interviews related to a number of non-recent sexual offences which are alleged to have taken place both in and outside of London. Officers continue to support the CPS as part of their investigation. Detective Superintendent Andy Furphy, whose team is leading the investigation, said, "We have a team of dedicated officers providing specialist support to the women who have come forward. We are committed to investigating sexual offenses, no matter how long ago they are alleged to have taken place." Brand has denied the allegations against him and said his relationships were always consensual. HS2 boss reveals $129.6 million bill for bat shed. HS2 is spending more than $129.6 million on a shed to protect bats on a section of the line, even though there is no evidence that high-speed trains interfere with bats, the project company's chairman has said. Sir John Thompson said the 1-kilometre curved structure at Sheephouse in Buckinghamshire will create a barrier so the creatures can fly over the railway without being affected by passing trains, as all bats are legally protected in the UK. He told the Rail Industry Association's annual conference in London on Thursday HS2 is calling the building a shed, and it is being built to appease Whitehall advisory body, Natural England. Sir John warned his audience they would not believe it, but the shed cost more than $129.6 million to protect the bats in this wood. It was, he said, an example of the UK's genuine problem with completing major infrastructure projects, explaining that the government-owned company has had to obtain 8,276 consents from other public bodies related to planning, transport and the environment to build Phase 1 of the railway between the capital and Birmingham. He said, "People say you've gone over the budget, but did people think about the bats? I'm being trite about it, but I'm trying to illustrate one example of the 8,276 consents of these. Other, costlier options were also looked at while the High-Speed 2 London to West Midlands Act was going through Parliament," he said, including boring a tunnel and rerouting the railway away from the wood. Even after Natural England approved the design, the company had to spend hundreds of thousands of pounds on lawyers and environmental specialists because the local council did not approve the work, Sir John said. "In the end, I won the planning permission by going above Buckinghamshire Council's head," he explained. Sir John, who has led the project since Mark Thurston left his role as chief executive in September 2023, warned in January that the estimated cost for Phase 1 has soared to as much as $86.4 billion. In 2013, HS2 was estimated to cost $48.6 billion for the entire planned network, including now scrapped extensions from Birmingham to both Manchester and Leeds. Locals warned to lock doors as 40 monkeys escape lab in South Carolina. 40 monkeys have escaped from a research facility in South Carolina. Thermal imaging cameras and traps have been deployed to recapture the animals, who broke free from the Alpha Genesis site in Yemassee on Wednesday night. Residents are strongly advised to keep doors and windows secured to prevent these animals from entering homes, police warned on Facebook. Locals in Yemassee, about 80 kilometers west of Charleston, have been told not to approach the monkeys and immediately call 911 if they spot them. Alpha Genesis says it provides non-human primate products and bioresearch services with more than 100 acres of quarantine, breeding, holding, and research space. It conducts clinical trials, including on brain disease treatments, and says it provides the highest standards of care for all animals. The breed that escaped hasn't been revealed, but the firm's site says it has macaque and capuchin monkeys. It is not the first escape from Alpha Genesis, according to local media, with 19 reportedly breaking free in 2016 before being recaptured 6 hours later. Pompeii DNA evidence suggests victims not as they seemed. Some of the victims buried in Pompeii following the eruption of Mount Vesuvius have been wrongly identified, new evidence suggests. Researchers used DNA testing on 14 casts of victims found in the ruins of the Roman city destroyed in 79 AD. Using DNA taken from fragmented skeletal remains, they concluded an adult holding a child and wearing a golden bracelet, long thought to have been a mother, was actually a man unrelated to the child. It was one of several surprises in what had become known as the House of the Golden Bracelet. Nearby were the bodies of another adult and child thought to be the rest of their nuclear family. But DNA evidence showed all four were male and not related to one another. Alyssa Mitnick of the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology in Germany said it shows the story that was long spun around these individuals was wrong. Ms. Mitnick said, "We were able to disprove or challenge some of the previous narratives built upon how these individuals were kind of found in relation to each other. It opens up different interpretations for who these people might have been." Another discovery was that at least one of two people locked in an embrace, long assumed to be sisters or a mother and daughter, was a man. Researchers also found Pompeii citizens came from diverse backgrounds but mainly descended from Eastern Mediterranean immigrants, illustrating how much people moved around and the multicultural dynamic of the Roman Empire. Following the disaster, bodies buried in mud and ash eventually decomposed, leaving spaces where they used to be. Casts were created from the voids in the late 1800s. Researchers focused on 14 casts undergoing restoration, and by using genetic material preserved for nearly 2 millennia, hoped to determine the sex, ancestry, and genetic relationships between the victims. The team, which also includes scientists from Harvard University and the University of Florence in Italy, published its research in the journal Current Biology.